Welcome. Thank you for attending today. We are happy to have you all here celebrating and acknowledging Women's History Month. The theme this year, if you're unaware, is Moving Forward Together, Women Educating and Inspiring Generations. The program today will feature 3 speakers. We have Barbara Graham and Floyd and Ruth Shimomura. We're so grateful to have these 3 community members here to share the history and stories of some of the area's teachers who have worked to educate and inspire generations of Yolo County and Sacramento area residents. Barbara will be speaking about longtime teacher and Yolo County Superintendent of Schools May Dexter-Henshall and some other 19th century Woodland teachers. Floyd will be sharing the history of the teaching of Japanese language and culture at the Winters Japanese School before World War II. And Ruth will be talking about her grandmother, Terue Kitamura, who was a resident of Woodland and taught at the Nichiren Church in downtown Sacramento. Before we get started, I'd like to read a land acknowledgement and give you some information about how the program will run and some little housekeeping tidbits. So, first of all, we should take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered for this program. For thousands of years, this land has been the home of the Patwin people, including the Yochadihi-Winton Nation today. The Patwin have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations. We are honored and grateful to be gathering here today on their traditional lands. So with that, the talks will be about an hour long. We will then have time for questions and conversation around the talks. And I'd like to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. So our first speaker will be local historian Barbara Graham. When Barbara told one of her sisters that her favorite actor was Jimmy Stewart, her sister replied, "You were born in the wrong era." Barbara says she had to concur. She loves old movies, reading vintage newspapers, and poking around antique shops and history museums. Barbara is a frequent flyer at the Yolo County Archives, has volunteered as a docent for the Stroll Through History for over 20 years, and currently serves as secretary for the Yolo County Historical Society and historian for Shakespeare Club, Woodland Shakespeare Club. Our second speakers will be Ruth and Floyd Shimomura. Floyd Shimomura is a retired attorney who grew up in Winters and graduated from the UC Davis Law School in 1973. Floyd worked in Davis as a law professor and in Sacramento for the state of California as a deputy attorney general, chief counsel for several departments, and administrative law judge. He also served as national president of the Japanese American Citizens League during the successful campaign for redress for Japanese Americans unjustly incarcerated during World War II. He also helped the Winters Museum develop its exhibit titled The Lost Japanese Community of Winters. Ruth Aoki Shimomura was born in Sacramento and attended Grafton Elementary in Knights Landing and Woodland High School. She was a 4-H All-Star and earned her teaching credential from Sacramento State College. She's been president of Davis Flower Arrangers and is currently an usher at the Mondavi Center for Performing Arts and a master gardener of Yolo County. She taught 3rd grade at Willow Spring Elementary School in Woodland. So, Barbara, if you want to come up.
I'd like to acknowledge Heather and Sarah and Rachel as well for always helping me whenever I needed it and providing the photos that you're going to be seeing today. So today, the first person I'll be talking about is Clara March Armstrong. Okay. Clara March, a native of Illinois, was born in 1864. Her mother, Mary, was also a native of Illinois, while her father, Joseph, hailed from New Hampshire. Clara had one brother, Frederick, and one sister named Fanny. In 1870, the March family moved to Stanislaus County, where Joseph raised sheep. But in 1878, he sold his flock of sheep, and the family moved once more, this time to Grafton, now known as Knights Landing, where Joseph purchased a farm. Joseph later became one of the founders and directors of the Farmers Mutual Insurance Company. As to Clara, she was remembered as being an exceedingly bright student. When Clara decided to devote her life to the teaching profession, she attended the State Normal School in San Jose. The school is now known as California State University, San Jose. Upon graduation in the spring of 1889, Clara returned to Yolo County, where she embarked on her teaching career. Clara was said to be a natural-born teacher and was remembered for inspiring confidence in her students. 2 of the schools where Clara taught were Cape and Cashville. And this school also, that's on this picture, Langville. And of course, you can probably tell this is Clara right her students just surrounding her. And I can't even imagine teaching. I tried to count and I couldn't even figure out how many, because it's all the heads are bobbing up and down, but it's at least 40, maybe even up to close to 50 students. So in 1894, Clara decided to throw her hat into the ring for the position of Superintendent of Schools for Yolo County, running on the Republican ticket. The voting at the convention was close, with Clara receiving 42 votes, while her opponent, incumbent George Banks, received 40 votes. Clara made history, becoming the first woman in Yolo County to receive a nomination for public office. And by the way, she couldn't even vote herself. Women weren't granted the right to vote until 1911, so she was really ahead of her time. Clara made history a second time when she won the election, becoming the first woman to hold an elected office in our county. The Yolo Semi-Weekly Mail reported since taking office, a more intelligent or conscientious public servant could not be found than the First Lady Superintendent of Schools of Yolo County. It was also stated in not one instance did she disappoint the high hopes of her friends, and in a short time after assuming the duties of her position, she had enlisted as her admirers many of the conservative ones who had questioned a woman's fitness for the place. One of Clara's duties as superintendent was to visit all of the schools in Yolo County. In February of 1896, she spent over a month traveling from school to school. As traveling was quite a bit different back then, I imagine Clara must have undertaken this task via horse and buggy. I wondered if she sometimes spent the night at the home of a teacher or a principal so as not to have to continually travel back to Woodland each evening. During this time, Clara worked 6 days a week. She spent Tuesday through Friday visiting schools, Saturday back in her office at the county courthouse, resting on Sunday, then back to work in her office on Mondays before it was off to another round of schools. As superintendent, Clara was responsible for organizing the annual Teachers Institute. All teachers were invited to the Institute and were expected to attend. The lectures presented at the Institutes varied from year to year, and might include such topics as child development or curriculum choices. The keynote speakers were generally chosen from school districts outside of Yolo County or from institutions of higher learning. I discovered a couple of amusing anecdotes from the Teachers Institute that occurred in 1891. This was before Clara's tenure as superintendent, but she was very likely one of the teachers in attendance. The Institute was a 3-day affair. Several lecture topics on the first day of the Institute included music, penmanship, and reading. On the second day, Mr. P.M. Fisher gave a lecture entitled Geography, How and How Much. The newspaper remarked Mr. Fisher is an excellent talker. In fact, he is a very interesting talker. There have been times heretofore when the men who have been imported to aid in conducting the institutes have been rather wearisome. Some of them came near to earning for themselves the title of stick. But it is entirely different with Mr. Fisher. He will interest you if you will listen to him. Later that day, the Institute attendees were able to take a break and simply relax, maybe even enjoy a bit of dancing, visit with one another, or perhaps play a game of cards or two. The guest speaker, Mr. Fisher, chose to join the party of ladies and gentlemen who were playing cards. When the game was over, Mr. Fisher commented that he was quite cold and began slapping his hands and proposed to his gentleman opponent that they should give the ladies an exhibition of boxing and at the same time warm up. The gentleman declined, saying that he knew nothing about boxing. Mr. Fisher replied that he knew nothing about boxing either, but he was cold, and he insisted on his friend boxing, but the friend steadily declined. Finally, one of the teachers, an English woman from Fairfield School, said, "Well, Professor, if our friend don't box and won't box, I guess I will have to accommodate you myself." Mr. Fisher was rather chagrined and said he was afraid he would hurt her. "I guess you'll not quite kill me," she replied. Fisher insisted that he did not wish to box with a woman, afraid he might accidentally give her a pair of black eyes, and should that happen, he would never forgive himself. But my eyes are black already, Mr. Fisher. Get your pup up. We don't stand such blarney at Fairfield School. And she squared herself for the opening bout. Mr. Fisher concluded that he had better fight, but made up his mind not to hurt her if he could help it. The two sparred for only a moment or two when the woman suddenly let go of a left-hander which caught Mr. Fisher in the left eye. He was lying on his back, seeing more stars than were ever in the heavens. The others picked him up and tied a beefsteak over his eye and explained that the woman was an expert boxer and taught boxing at her school. Fisher thanked them for the information, but said it had come a little late. It was rumored that there were several lightweights among the Yolo County teachers who were anxiously awaiting to challenge Mr. Fisher. Each year when the business of the Institute was concluded, a reception was held for the attendees. In 1895, Clara arranged for the reception to be held at the Julian Hotel. Clara received her guests in one of the parlors, and for each person she was said to have a kindly word and a cordial greeting. The guests were all soon at ease and heartily enjoying the event. It was probably a sign of the times that the Daily Democrat also reported on Clara's attire, stating she wore a cream white silk with white ribbon and chiffon ruffles. Her hair was adorned with red rosebuds, and her petite form and gracious manner were much admired. And so I brought these red roses in honor of Clara. I thought about wearing red roses in my hair, but I thought, maybe not. I'll just bring the roses. Yeah. So two women who were assisting Clara that evening were Sophia Peart and Harriet Lee, both of whom would later hold the title of Yolo County Superintendent of Schools themselves. In December of 1896, Clara married Edward Milton Armstrong. The newspaper reported that the wedding was the surprise of the season. The wedding was a small affair, with only Clara's father and brother in attendance. The ceremony was held at Emma Jean Porter's home on College Street, where Clara had been a boarder. Once married, the couple continued to live in Mrs. Porter's home, although Edward's work frequently took him to Iowa Hill in Placer County, where he was the superintendent of the Oro Mining Company. Edward also represented the Bidwell Nursery and owned a nursery himself in Santa Clara. In 1897, Clara's annual school district statistical report was released. The census revealed that there were 54 schools in Yolo County with a total attendance of 4,406 pupils. Statistics also revealed that in the past year there had been a small but steady decrease in the number of school children in communities that depended on raising wheat, while districts that were diversifying their crops, including raising fruit, experienced a small but steady increase in the number of students. It is interesting to read the names of all the schools, including Apricot, Liberty, Mountain, Monday, Monitor, and so many more. One of the schools, Spring Lake, has been preserved and is located at the Yolo County Fairgrounds. If you attend the Yolo County Fair in August, be sure to visit the school. One of the exhibits in the school is a map of the county noting where all of the schools were once located. Photos and paintings of several of the schools hang on the wall, and there's also a slideshow playing continuously with photos of many of the schools from back in the day. In 1897, a contingent of individuals who resided in Esparto were hoping to disband Esparto High School. The concern appears to be a tax issue. In June of that year, Clara attended Esparto High's graduation exercises, where she presented diplomas to the graduates and gave this short address. The Esparto Union High School has reached its second milestone. A class of 9 young ladies and gentlemen have now completed a course of study and have come together for the last time as a class. 5 years ago, the first high school in Yolo County was established in Winters. 1 year later, this school, Esparto High School, was organized, and 2 years ago, the Woodland High School was organized. This is an era of high schools, for they are the people's colleges, and the people are beginning to realize their importance, as is shown by the increased number of organized schools in our Golden State. Competition of all kinds of business is now so great that a person must have an education in order to command success. The discipline of high school work fits for keen work in business, in business. The value of a good high school to a community cannot not be estimated, and as a noble man has said, if the high school is worthily to discharge its sublime functions, it must remember that character, no less than knowledge, is essential to the idea of citizenship. It will present to its pupils the noblest incentives, hold before them the noblest examples of patriotism and personal value, and strive to fashion them in the spirit, if not according to the letter of Milton's lofty dictum, I call therefore a complete and generous education which fits a man to perform justly, skillfully, and magnanimously all the offices, both private and public, of peace and war. Fortunately, as we all know, Esparto High School was not disbanded. A little more than a month after Clara's visit to Esparto, the unthinkable happened. Clara was known to be extremely conscientious, never missing a day of work. But at the end of June 1897, she was described as being slightly indisposed. For the first time since becoming the county superintendent of schools, she stayed home. 2 days later, on July 2nd, 1897, she was stricken with a violent pain. Dr. Kyer was summoned. Soon Dr. Boissard arrived as well, but there was nothing that could be done for her other than alleviate her agony. Clara passed away at 8 o'clock that night from septic peritonitis. She was only 33 years old. The Daily Democrat reported, as a fatal termination of Mrs. Armstrong's indisposition was an unthought of contingency, none of the members of her family had been summoned. They saw her in the full flesh of animated, vigorous womanhood, then they saw her cold and still in death. Her immediate family consists of her husband, father, mother, her sister Fanny, who is married and resides in Lake County, and her brother Frederick. She was a devoted wife, daughter, and sister, and was fondly loved in return. But in this dark hour, the stricken ones may feel the heart of the entire community throbbing in sympathy with theirs. It was not only in qualities of mind that Mrs. Armstrong excelled. Her purity of spirit, her sweetness of disposition, and her modesty of demeanor will ever linger in the memory of those who enjoyed her acquaintance. Clara's funeral service was held at the Methodist Church. Clara was then laid to rest in the Woodland City Cemetery. When it was time to appoint a new superintendent of schools, the Yolo County supervisors received petitions from H.B. Pendergast, who went by Bruce, Thomas J. Crane, and Harriet Lee. The first round of voting netted 2 votes for Pendergast, 2 votes for Crane, and 1 for Lee. A second round of voting commenced. The results were the same. On the third round of voting, Supervisor Fredericks broke the tie by voting for Pendergast instead of Lee, but Harriet Lee would have her chance another time. Sophia Fisk Peart was born in Michigan in November of 1849. Her father, Henry, was a physician who was also interested in the mining industry. In 1852, the family moved to Placerville, where Dr. Peart operated a drugstore and represented El Dorado County as a member of the state senate. The family subsequently relocated to Sutter Creek, where Dr. Fisk worked in the mines for a number of years. He later resumed his medical practice. Sophia attended the Young Ladies Seminary in Benicia, which had been founded in 1852. The school moved to Oakland in 1871 and is now known as Mills College at Northeastern University. One day, Sophia joined her father on a visit to the Central Eureka Mine in Sutter Creek. While at the mine, Sophia watched as a cage was hoisted up the mine shaft. One of the men exiting the cage was Benjamin Peart. The air in the mines would have likely been filled with dust due to the stamp mills constantly crushing the rocks in search of gold. But in addition to the dust, love must have also been in the air. After meeting one another, Benjamin and Sophia fell in love. In 1867, they were married. The couple lived in Sutter Creek, where their son Roscoe was born. They later moved to San Francisco. Benjamin worked for Alvin Hayward, a large owner of the Kennedy and Argonaut mines. The family's next move was to Woodland, where Benjamin pursued farming. He and Russell Blowers, frequently referred to as RB, were the first farmers in the area to experiment with growing fruit. I'm sorry. Oh, wait, that's Sophia. You did it. Yes. So this is Sophia. A lot of people notice these two little twins here, because they're both dressed like little Lord Fauntleroy.
What school is that, Bob?
It's Woodland Grammar School.
Thank you.
Although Sophia's formal education was behind her, she continued her studies with a small group of women dedicated to reading the works of Shakespeare. The club, aptly named the Shakespeare Club, was founded in 1885 and is still active today. Sophia was the club's first and longest serving president, holding the position for 10 years. The years 1895 through 1898 brought a lot of change for Sophia. In 1895, she founded a private school. The school occupied 2 rooms in Hesperian College. Sophia taught the primary and grammar grades, while another teacher, Mrs. Humphrey, conducted the kindergarten class. In 1896, sadly, Sophia's husband Benjamin passed away. She continued to teach at her private school for 1 more year, but then decided to teach in the public school system. In 1897, she was both vice principal at the Oak Avenue School and taught low 1st grade. Then in 1898, she successfully ran for the office of Yolo County Superintendent. And of course, she couldn't vote either. As had the previous superintendent, Sophia visited all of the schools in Yolo County on a regular basis and was responsible for organizing the annual Teachers Institute. In May of 1902, Sophia attended a superintendent's conference in Fresno. She spoke about the unjust criticism teachers sometimes receive from parents when their child is failing. She stated the necessity of regular communication with parents by way of both letters as well as in-person visits when possible. She also stressed the importance of being tactful. Initially, Sophia decided not to run for a 2nd term. It was reported that she felt compelled to move back to San Francisco, but in August she reversed her decision. Sophia was nominated and enthusiastically supported for school superintendent once again on the Republican ticket. She ran against Minnie DeVilbiss. Minnie DeVilbiss was a distinguished educator from Winters. Minnie won the election by 133 votes, so it's pretty close. The November 8, 1902 Daily Democrat heartily congratulated Minnie, but also included the following tribute to Sophia. A superintendent who is the peer of many in the state has been displaced. The schools of Yolo County were never in better hands than they have been during the past 4 years. By her whole soul devotion to her work, by her keen perception of the needs of our schools and their overshadowing importance to the children, by her high intelligence and conception of the benefits of the right kind of education, Mrs. S.E. Peart has proved herself so eminently qualified for the office of school superintendent that it will be the highest compliment to her successor to say that at the end of her term, she has done well. In December, Sophia graciously invited Minnie to spend 2 days in her office to familiarize herself with the duties of the position. The teachers remembered Sophia for her ability to rise above politics. She was praised for creating a new and improved course of study for the students and skillfully guiding the teachers as they navigated their way through the process, creating an atmosphere free from discord and friction. On the last day of school, Sophia invited the Woodland High School's 1902 graduating class to her home, where the students enjoyed a ping pong tournament and a drawing contest in which everyone drew a pig while blindfolded. Pineapple sherbet and cake were served. Before departing for San Francisco, Sophia was given at least 2 farewell parties, one from the school district held at the Julian Hotel and another from her beloved Shakespeare Club. Upon Sophia's return to San Francisco, Sophia served as president of the Laurel Club, an organization that appears to have been similar to the Shakespeare Club in respect to their interest in the study of literature. She was also a trustee in the Children's Hospital. Sophia experienced a great deal of loss. Her daughter, Madeline, died at age 2. In 1877, her son Roscoe was only 9 years old when he drowned on their property while fishing. In 1913, after an extended illness, her son Raymond passed away at age 35. Then in 1914, her son Lloyd was a passenger in a car that while crossing a bridge plunged into the San Joaquin River. All 5 people in the car perished. When Sophia's own health began to fail, she moved to Berkeley. She passed away on June 1st, 1924. The following day, a lengthy tribute to Sophia was printed in the Democrat, including the following paragraph. She achieved distinction as an educator and was intellectually one of the most distinguished teachers of her period. Yolo County has many memories of this lovable woman to cherish and keep green, but one of the finest of these, beyond question, is a recollection of the great service she rendered the cause of education. Americans admire real quality in a man or woman, and for that reason, the subject of this humble tribute was respected for her intellectual attractiveness and for the great interest she manifested in the welfare of the youth of the land. I'll close Sophia's story with the following words of wisdom she penned one day. Tolerance is a great thing, is it not? Not to be too sure that we are right, to be wary of prejudice, to seek others' person's point of view, to hate narrowness, and to have open minds. May Eliza Dexter-Henshall. Here she is with all of her students too. And this is actually Spring Lake School where she taught. May Eliza Dexter was born in Woodland on May 1st, 1867. Her mother, Eliza Hills, was a native of Illinois. May's father, Thomas Jefferson Dexter, was Canadian by birth. Thomas was 5 years old when his family moved to Illinois. He recalled wolves roaming the countryside and the nearest grist mill as being 50 miles away. When his family exhausted their supply of flour, his mother used to grind the wheat in a coffee mill. Instead of bread, they often ate hulled corn. Thomas's mother was a generous woman who would lend what few books she owned to others. This bit of information becomes significant later in the story when we read about her granddaughter May and May's connection to lending books. To paraphrase Yogi Berra, it will be deja vu all over again. In 1845, when Thomas was only 15 years old, his mother passed away. He later recalled, "Of my mother, I remember her struggles to care for her little brood. There were angels, as Emerson said, hovering around, toil and want and hope and mutual faith." Actually, obviously he was very well read. In 1849, at age 18, Thomas crossed the plains to California in search of gold. He reportedly had some success. 6 years later, Thomas returned to Illinois to marry Eliza, a teacher by profession. Then it was back to California where they settled on a farm 3 miles east of Woodland. Thomas and Eliza had 6 children. 2 of the children died in infancy. Of the surviving children, May was the youngest. Sadly, May's mother, Eliza, died when she was only 36 years old. In June of 1900, Thomas traveled back to Illinois one final time to visit his family and friends, staying for 5 months. Upon returning home, Thomas said, "The sorrow of parting with my friends I will try to forget. The wealth of memories keep forever." When Thomas passed away in 1901, he was remembered as a quiet and unassuming man, a voracious reader, and a profound thinker. Like May, May, like her father, was a voracious reader, and like her mother, she became a teacher. May taught in Yolo County schools, both in the country as well as in town, where she taught for 9 years at Woodland Grammar School. In January of 1906, the current superintendent of schools, Minnie DeVille, passed away. There was much speculation as to who the county supervisors would select to complete Minnie's term. Although several names had been bantered about, May was the only one to actually turn in an application. As the Board of Supervisors knew her to be a highly respected and capable teacher, she was appointed. On election day later that same year, May ran unopposed. She was then re-elected in 1910. She still couldn't vote. As had the superintendents before her, May spent a significant amount of time traveling to schools. No more horse and buggy for May though. By this time the district had purchased a car for May's travels. In her 1906 statistical report, May noted that Yolo County had 48 school districts, which each school was called a district from what I gather, independent of the high schools, and 77 teachers in the grammar and primary grades, not counting the kindergarten teacher, and I don't know why they didn't count the kindergarten teacher in that. Of those, 72 teachers were women, while 5 were men. The one kindergarten was located in Woodland, and the teacher's salary was $65 a month. In the early 1900s, the State Board of Health prepared monthly bulletins for California's teachers. In 1908, May sent a letter to the Department of Health. Her letter was subsequently published in the bulletin with a brief introduction which reads, "Not long ago," the Board of Health is speaking with the introduction, "Not long ago, a wide-awake and active county superintendent of schools, Ms. May E. Dexter of Woodland, Yolo County, wrote us as follows. Dear Sir, the Yolo County Board of Education will issue a new course of study for the schools of this county on July 1st, 1908. We are striving to make it one that will bring about the best possible results. We realize that quite frequently there are children who are considered stupid or incorrigible by the teachers when in reality they are suffering from some physical defect that if understood by the teacher might be overcome. In order to help the teachers to detect these physical defects, we wish to have a few simple instructions given in our course of study, such as how to test the eyesight and the hearing. Also, how they may know when a child has adenoids and any other defect that might be corrected by watchfulness on the part of the teacher. I realize that your life must be a very busy one, but if you can spare a short time in which to write a few simple instructions for the benefit of the teachers and children that we can have printed in our course of study, we shall be very grateful to you. Very respectfully, May E. Dexter." While in office, May encouraged the Board of Supervisors to raise the tax rate, with the additional revenue being used to benefit the schools. By doing so, teachers' salaries in all but 4 districts were increased. Also during May's tenure, the elementary school term was increased from 8 months to 9 months, thereby reducing the number of years required to graduate. Under her leadership, Fillmore School District was established, and new schools were built for Pleasant Prairie, Fairview, and Union. In addition, Woodland High School added manual and domestic training to the curriculum. A big concern for teachers during this time was the lack of books in the school libraries. In 1903, the evolution of the county library system began. Initially, only people who worked for the state of California could use the state library. But in 1903, legislation changed to allow all Californians to borrow their books through interlibrary loan. For those who lived a great distance from a library and were not able to take advantage of the interlibrary loan system, the Extension Department was then created, sending traveling librarians to those communities. And I've seen pictures of people even on sleds in the snow bringing books to communities that were, I mean, they did what they promised. Wherever the person was, they'd bring the books if they had it. Then in 1905, 2 women known as library organizers traveled throughout the state, encouraging communities to open their own libraries, identifying buildings in their county seat that could be suitable to serve as a library, and educating the people on standard library procedures. The first year, the women visited 88 towns and 20 libraries were established. Once the library in the county seat was established, library stations could also be set up in other towns in the county, funds permitting. Examples of library stations were stores, post offices, schools, and farmhouses. For branches that maintained public reading rooms, the county free library supplied magazines, dictionaries, and encyclopedias, again, funds permitting. In at least one case, even stereoscopes were available to patrons. I don't have a stereoscope, but I brought my Viewmaster. It's kind of like this if you don't know what it is, but probably most people know what it is. So. Whenever a patron wished to read a book that was not in their library's collection, they could still request a book from the state library, and if available, the book would be sent free of charge. One of the most surprising library stations to come of this process was in Amador County in Castro Hill, where a citizen offered her building that housed a chicken brooder. The owner of the building moved the chickens to one end of the building and erected a partition between the chickens and the books. The library proved to be so popular that the chickens were soon moved out to other quarters, with the books encompassing the entire brooder building. For those counties who already had a city library, a separate building could be established to maintain the county library's collection of books, or the county supervisors could enter into a contract with an existing library. In Yolo County, the supervisors decided on option number 2. In Yolo County, the supervisors, although the 2 libraries shared the building, Woodland County and the city libraries had their own entrances. And I had a picture that I neglected to put on here, but it's kind of surreal when you see the Woodland Library picture when it says county library on the side that, well, I'll read that, but it was on one side and the city library was the other. It's like, what? This is very strange, but that's the way it worked, and it was very handy, I'm sure, to share the library, but they just went in different doors. So, yeah, although they shared the same building, Woodland County had their own entrances. The city library faced First Street as it does today, and the county library's entrance faced Court Street. May was a staunch supporter of the county free library system. County librarians were trained to know which books were appropriate for the students. Schools borrowed books from the county library on a rotating basis. The county libraries continuously providing new reading material and then recirculating the books to other schools. The county library also provided phonograph records for classroom use, as well as picture frames displaying works of art for a period of time and replacing that picture with a new one. In June of 1912, while attending a joint conference of the California Library Association and the county libraries, May gave an enthusiastic presentation on what the County Free Library meant to the schools of Yolo County. She read many letters written by teachers as to the value of having expert advice of a trained librarian to guide the children's reading. Of course, May's job as school superintendent entailed a variety of duties, decisions, and requests. In May of 1914, the superintendent of public instruction, Edward Hyatt, contacted May asking for her assistance in soliciting funds from the school children to complete a statue that was to be unveiled at the 1915 Panama Pacific Exposition to be held in San Francisco. The statue, referred to as California Monument to Motherhood, cost $22,500 with an additional $2,500 for the pedestal and installation. The maximum amount any family was asked to donate was 5 cents. Various organizations throughout Yolo County held fundraisers as well. From the beginning, controversy swirled around the statue. Some wondered why a sculpture from the East Coast was commissioned to create a likeness of a pioneer California woman. Then there were delays in its completion. Although the statue was supposed to be installed on December 31st, 1914, it wasn't unveiled until 6 months later, June 30th, 1915. Reactions to the statue were mixed. The statue shows the pioneer woman's arms outstretched as she bravely looks forward. A boy and a girl stand by her side. The pioneer woman wears classic pioneer garb. The 2 children, however, are not wearing clothes. I didn't bring a picture of that. I decided against it. I had one from way far away. Oh, what's the point? So they're not wearing clothes. While some appreciated the monument, others did not. One of those who did not was the president of the Exposition's Women's Board, who remarked that it was the most stoic, prosaic specimen of motherhood one could imagine. She also said, I should be glad if a competent earthquake put her out of commission. When the exposition ended, the original plan was to move the statue to San Francisco Civic Center. Instead, for decades, it remained at its original place in the Palace of Fine Arts, or under the Palace of Fine Arts, where it was subject to the elements and it was even vandalized. But in 1940, the statue was rescued, restored, and installed in Golden Gate Park. And as far as I know, it is still there. I didn't take a field trip to check it out, but I think it's still there. Has anybody been there and seen it? No, okay. Sacramento, the Sacramento Union, why am I reading this? I'm on the wrong page. 10, here I need 10. That's a good thing I number these. In 1914, May once again ran for school superintendent. Despite May's many accomplishments in office, she lost the election to a very formidable opponent, Harriet Lee. But if Andrew Lloyd Webber had written a song for May instead of Eva Peron, it would have been, Don't Cry for Me, Yolo County. Because May was then appointed to be one of the school library organizers for the state of California. And that's the deja vu all over again I mentioned earlier. For 22 years, May traveled extensively throughout California, facilitating partnerships between school districts and county libraries. Additionally, throughout the 1920s, May taught at UC Berkeley School of Librarianship. She retired in 1937. On a personal note, in 1910, May had married John Henshall, a native of London, England. John was a veteran of the Spanish-American War, having served in the Philippines. He stayed in the Philippines for a time after the war, where he worked as a reporter. When John returned to the United States, he worked for a number of newspapers, including the Woodland Mail, the Sacramento Union, and the Sacramento Bee. In January of 1923, the Daily Democrat referred to John as the presiding genius of the Capital News Bureau of Sacramento. John also enjoyed writing fiction, penning stories of the Old West, including a story about Black Bart. His story appeared in the 1903 Overland Monthly, a literary magazine published in California and initially edited by Bret Harte. John passed away in November of 1938. May lived a long life, passing away on June 8, 1962, at the age of 95. But there was one more achievement in store for May. In 2016, she was posthumously honored when she was inducted into the California Library Hall of Fame. I contacted the California Library Association to inquire if there's a permanent display honoring the recipient somewhere, and I thought maybe the state library that would honor the recipients of this award, but unfortunately there is not. Inductees, however, are featured in the California Library Association's online California Library Hall of Fame websites. Today, we in Yolo County are fortunate enough to have county libraries at the following locations. Davis, we have the Mary Stevens branch in South Davis, and the Marguerite Montgomery Elementary School, which has limited hours. You can return your books during their limited hours, and they have a very small collection of books. I didn't even know that one was in existence. Then there's Esparto, Clarksburg, Winters, West Sacramento, Yolo, Knights Landing, and then we have the wonderful Shipley Walter Center, which maintains the Yolo County Archives and is a center for library services. So that about does it. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to tell you about my grandmother, Terue Kitamura. She was born in 1896 in Japan, Kochi, Japan, and she passed away in 1956 in Yolo County. I was only a third grader when she passed away, so I didn't get to know her very much. I knew that she was an invalid at the time that I knew her, and she was bedridden. After World War II, she was never quite the same again. You know, when they came back from the internment camp, her house had been burned. In fact, it was still smoldering, so all her possessions were in that little house that they shared. She's an Issei. That means she was the first generation Japanese American to be here. It goes by, if you count in Japanese, ichi, ni, san, shi, go. Ichi is number 1. Number 2 is ni, so that would be nisei. That would be our parents. And it's this line here, the nisei group. Issei group, nisei group. Sansei would be Donald, Kitamura, Floyd and I. Actually, Richard Sakai too. He would be a sansei too, because you're the 3rd generation is here. And then it's ichi, ni, san, shi. They don't say shi because shi means death in Japanese. So they call it the Yonsei. So this generation here would be the Yonsei. Our children down here. So you can move to the next one now. She was born in Kochi, Japan. Not very many people know of Kochi. It's in the Shikoku Island. Kochi is a prefecture or a county in Japan. When you go to Japan, you may know of Tokyo, Mount Fuji, Kyoto, and Osaka. But Kochi is not, it's called, it's like the hinterlands or the inaka, or the areas that are called country there. So the people from Kochi, a lot of them ended up here in Yolo County, Woodland, or also there's some people in the Fresno area from Kochi too. But they tended to stay together and settle together so they could be with their relatives and friends. Okay, so she was born in Kochi, Japan in 1896. This is a photo of her in 1908. She was born to a very prosperous family, very wealthy. They had a multi-story compound, with gates all around it. This is a photo of her at 12. She's right here with her father, mother, younger sister, younger brother, and her older brother. It was very unusual for a girl to go to receive that much education, but she had 13 years of formal education. And usually a girl would just know about, learn about cooking, tea ceremony, and flowering, but she had a higher education. She was also artistic and a seamstress. When we were cleaning out her possessions, there were a lot of knitting and crocheting and dresses. She made just about all the dresses. In 1918, she married my grandfather, Terue Kitamura, and they sailed to California. Sukeji was living here, but he went all the way back to Japan to get my grandmother so that she wouldn't have to come over alone. The first baby was actually Sukeji worked in farms in the Liberty Island area in Sacramento Delta. He pulled tomatoes and also asparagus. So life was hard at that time. In 1919, they had their first child, William or Bill Kitamura, that's Donald's father. And for the next 2 years, few years, they would have my mother, who was Betty, and Grace. My grandmother never called them by their American names. Their Japanese names were William Bill Tsutaya, and then my mother's name was Taeko, and Grace was Nobuko. So that's the names that they were known in the Japanese American community. Betty is my mother, and she became an accomplished flower arranger and teacher within Yolo County. If you know the name Betty Aoki, you associate her with the Yolo County Fair and the State Fair flower arrangement displays. In the 1920s, Terue taught Japanese to Japanese American children in the Delta, including your own children. You'd see Nobuko here and Taeko here. I don't see Uncle Bill here either. But then she had quite a big class. When the Japanese language schools came into being, because a lot of the Issei parents were finding that they couldn't communicate with their own children who were immersed in English in schools. And so the Japanese wanted to be able to communicate with their own children. So they established these language schools, which also taught culture, and traditions of Japanese. They, in their own mind, I think they thought that they would be going back to Japan, and they wanted their children to be, able to communicate with their grandparents back in Japan too. And they didn't want them to get behind on the Japanese language or culture. So they came up with these schools. They were usually on Saturday or after their regular schooling. Okay, in the early 1930s, the Kitamura family moved to the outskirts of Woodland. This is the old map of Yolo County here, that they moved from Liberty Island to Woodland. And she had Japanese school for the Woodland Japanese Americans too. In that, if you see some of the pictures that she has here, she was able to, she had her daughter write down in English the names of her students here. So you might recognize some of the names as she has the first name Yoshio Kawazoe, and then the Abes, the Shigakis, Aokis, Nakagakis, Shimizus, again Takeda, Kitamura, Nishikawas, Shimizus, Shiraishi, and then Kubotas, Fukushimas, and Shigakis again. So they took the time to write down all the names of the students so they wouldn't forget. Both of these pictures happen. Here, she was part of in the 1930s, she was a senior woman teacher at Sacramento Nichiren Church. And she's shown right here. shown right here too. You know, many years, you know, before I started teaching, people would come up to me and tell me, you know, what a great teacher my grandmother was, how they learned so much of the culture and language, and that they really appreciated what she did for them. Okay, this is a 1937 family photo of Grace or Nobuko, William, Tsusae, Grandpa, Sukeji, my mother, Betty Taeko, and Terue. She took her children back to Japan twice to meet her parents and their uncles. And at that time, it was a big deal for them to go by boat, to go all the way to Japan. But she was very proud of her family. She's proud of her culture, and also you know, what she did. Her teaching career was cut short by the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. This is shown the Woodland train station, where all the Japanese Americans were rounded up, and they were taken in train cars that were blocked out by black fabric. That's what my mother remembers most about people not being able to look out, or they couldn't look in to see them. But they could only take what they could carry. You know, that means 1 or 2 suitcases, just what they could carry. Little did they know when they left this train station that their house would be burned and still smoldering when they came back. This was the configuration at Amachi, Colorado, and this is one of 11 concentration camps throughout the United States. 120,000 Japanese were taken to camps in the interior parts of the country and left there for the duration of the war. A lot of times the camps weren't quite ready when they were taken in those train cars. So they had to go to a racetrack and clean out the stalls. I remember my mom talking about how they had to clean the excrement first, and then they would clean the hay out, and then they would wash it down, and then they would have to fill their own mattresses so that they can sleep in them. That was very difficult time for them too. But a lot of times the barracks weren't quite ready either, so that they would have to do some hammering and nailing to fix them up. It was very drafty there, so a lot of times they had to tear paper and fold them up so they could fill the cracks, so that the wind and sand wouldn't get through. But it was very Spartan conditions there. This was, you think, this is a compound where they had guard posts, you know, surrounding it, but the guards weren't pointing their guns outside. They were pointing them inside at the prisoners that they held. And I think that was a difficult time for my grandmother, because you know, she lost control of her family. Her children didn't even eat at the same time at the mess hall. They would have different times where they would eat with their friends, and then the older people, or the EC, would eat together. So she felt that she was losing control of her family there, and family was so important to her. Oh, this leads me back to 1955. I was a first grader at Grafton School in Lakes Landing. Miss Bristow was my teacher, and I remember my classmates fondly. And we have Freddie Miller, Richard Mallory, Ronnie Ross, Grace Lara, that's me right there, Stevie Takimoto, Manuel Lara, Diana Griffin, Erlinda Mendoza, Judy Bryson, Sandy Green, Norman Green, Dean Pearson, Lynn Evans, Keith Dolly, Julie Chastain, and Linda Henderson right there too. So I've kept track with many of them. Only Freddie Miller and Dean Pearson have passed away. But, and Linda Henderson also. But we spent 8 years together each classroom each grade had a different classroom. Yeah. But I treasure those days at Grafton. After my years at Woodland High School, I went to Sacramento State and became a teacher. This is one of my classes at Willow Spring Elementary School, where I was a third grade teacher. Floyd, my husband, of 53 years, tells me that I look more like my grandmother, and I have some of the same attributes that she had. Oh, he wanted to make the comparison the 7-year difference between my classroom and her school. I think she had a very hard life. I appreciate all she did to instill a lot of education and a family, fairness, and kindness to us all. Over here on this side, I have to tell you that this is Terue and Sukeji, and then her children, Grace, Betty, and Bill. David also became a teacher. Bill and Neil's son became a teacher. I became a teacher. We've got, is John Kitamura here? He became a highway patrolman. And some more teachers are Jamie Shimomura, our daughter-in-law, is a principal, first a teacher, then a principal at Durham School in Fremont. Allie Nakaji Shimomura is married to our son, and she's a teacher at Sunset School in San Francisco. And our granddaughter, Raina Shimomura, is in her second year at the University of Hawaii, and she's studying to become a teacher. So it all started with Terue, and now we have a new generation of teachers. So we thank her for all her sacrifices and all that she's done for the Japanese American community here in Woodland. Thank you. This is only a 60-year difference. And, but she passed away when she was only 60, you know, and I'm 77 now, so I've led a full life.
My name is Floyd Shimomura, and they introduced me about an hour ago. My resume hasn't changed, so. I think the main point is that I grew up in Winters, and my family has lived there since 1898. Okay? So I'm going to talk just for a few minutes about the Winters Japanese School that existed in the pre-World War II period. Okay. Ruthie mentioned that most of the people in the Woodland area, the Japanese, came from Kochi, but Winters, most of the people came from Wakayama, which is not too far from Kochi, but it's on a different island. Next slide. You know, what happened was in the 1880s, a lot of Japan opened up to the world, and one of the things that the new government and Emperor Meiji proclaimed was for the Japanese to go out in the world and learn new knowledge and bring it back to Japan, because they suddenly realized that they were about 200 years behind most of Europe in terms of the Industrial Revolution. And so many of the wealthy students went back east, and they attended schools in Boston and New York, that area. But poorer students only could make it to San Francisco, all right? So in the 1880s, by 1885, they said there were about 4,000 Japanese in San Francisco, and half of them, 2,000, were students. And by students, that means people who were around 18 to maybe 25 years old. Because they were not wealthy, they earned their keep by being houseboys for the wealthy families in San Francisco. So they would cook and clean and do gardening and things like that during the morning and the evening. But in the afternoon, they took English speaking classes. Now this wasn't in the public school system because they were too old to go to the public school system, but it was more of an informal tutoring type of situation. But during the summer, all the tutors that were teaching them English took summer vacation. So in effect, students, Japanese students, got summer vacation as well. And what happened was that because they still needed more income, many of them learned about a part-time job picking apricots and peaches and prunes in Winters. And they probably learned that from, part of their job was to go down to the produce market, which at that time was pretty much run by the Chinese. And the Chinese was the major labor force in the Winters area in that early period of time, after the gold rush, and for 20 or 30 years after that. So some of them came out to Winters in 1888, and they were hired by the Brink brothers. This is when the Brink brothers learned that the Japanese were not subject to the Chinese Exclusion Act, which went into effect in 1882. So their labor force was drying up by 1888. And so, you know, they saw a few Japanese students start to show up picking apricots in the summer. So they decided to organize them, and some of them started to come to Winters. And what happened was that one of these students, his name was, well, they called him George Takahashi. That's his American name that was given to him. You know, he was, we know he was a student because in the 1900 census, he reported that he could read and write English. Okay, this was an extraordinary thing for Issei at that point in time. And because he could communicate in English, he became the foreman of one of the foremen of the Brink Brothers ranch, because he was able to recruit Japanese workers and communicate what management wanted the workers to do. And you know, working in an apricot fruit type of ranch, that's a year-round activity. I mean, from the standpoint of there's something to do to care for the trees in the fall. You know, there's pruning, and then there's irrigating if there's not enough water or rain in the wintertime. And also they have to thin the apricots in the spring, early spring, fertilize. So that became a year-round job for George, and so rather than just coming out during the summer to work, he became a permanent fixture on that ranch. And because of that, he was able to go back to Japan and marry Asano. And really, Asano is a major character in this little brief story of mine, because this photograph was taken in 1907. And that's a significant year because that's the year that there was a decision made to stop further Japanese immigration to the United States, at least for farm laborers.